We are going to be going over ArrayList, arrays with an ArrayList comparison, traversing arrays with a few methods, and we're going to do pass by value with arrays. So today's going to be a pretty array focused class, but we do use them very often. They're a very useful skill to learn. So you guys probably see the warm-up question. The two questions are, what is array2 and what is array.length? If anyone knows, you guys are welcome to say it in chat. So this is just a few exercises from last class. Only one person? Does anyone know what the answer is to what is array2 and what is array.length? Okay. So Lois got it. Lois has an answer. Okay, well, so array2 is gonna be the third element in the list because 0, 1, 2, right? So array2 is gonna actually equal to 3, and array.length is also 3 because there's 3 elements in there. So just remember that the index starts from 0. All right, we're gonna get started with array lists. Array lists are probably one of the most common ways to use an array, and it shows up very often when you're actually writing code because it gives you a lot of really useful features that otherwise you would have to implement yourself if you're using just a normal bare bones array. So let's take a look at an array list. So in order to create an array list, we're going to learn a few new syntax. So let's break apart this first line here that we see on the slide, this first variable. We have array list integer. Array is equal to new, array list, these the less than and right than symbol and a parentheses, okay? And these, so array list is the type, capital A, capital L, okay? It's the name of the array list. But then in these brackets, right, the less than and greater than brackets, we specify the type that we want to hold. So this is in contrast to, why can't I go back? There you go. This is different from, where's the arrays? There you go. This is different from the normal array where we specify the type that it holds first, and then we just say these two brackets. Here in the array list, we put it inside these things, okay, these brackets. And we call this a generic, okay? And that's something we're going to learn very late on in the Java curriculum. But for now, just to generalize it, think of the generic as you're telling it what kind of information that it's going to hold, what type. And note here that instead of int, we do capital int, or we have a capital I, and we say the entire word integer. That's because an array list can only store objects. It can't store primitive types. So we have to use the object version of an int, which is just integer with a capital I, okay? And an array is equal to new array list. And this will initialize a new array list with a size of 0, okay? And then the cool thing about array list is it can grow and it can shrink. So its length can change, okay? So if we want to add a value to the array list, all we have to do is just say the variable name array, and we just say array.add and then our value. So this will add an element with a value of 2 at the end of the array list. And then we can add another one, array.add 5. This will do the exact same thing. It will add the value 5 to the end of the array list. And then we can actually insert an element in between. Everything is inserted in between. We can have it be inserted in between a specific index. So if you have a very long array, you can insert an element right in between. Can you guys all see the slides? Because someone just messaged me that they're black. Okay, I think I'm fine then. All right. And then we can see here we have two parameters instead of one, array.add 1, comma 2. And what it will do is it will insert an element with a value of 2 at an index of 1. So kind of think of it as inserting. You have a bunch of cards laid out on your table, and you insert a new card right in between, and then you move them to the side. Okay, so that lets you insert stuff directly into the array list. That's what the 2-parameter one does. And so when we say .add, actually, we have a separate slide for that. So, oh my God, these slides. Okay. And then in order to get an element from the array at a specific index, you say array.get 0. So we're calling arrays the methods of an array list. Okay. So we just say array.get, and it will give us the element at 0. And then we have array.size, which will give us the size of the array list. Now, array.size is very similar to the normal array where we say .length, okay? But again, because array list can shrink and grow, you can do a lot of logic based on the length of it. You can also say the index of you can also get the index of an element. So if the array has a certain element, if you pass in the value of the element, it will give you the index of it, or the position of the element in the array. Okay, and then you can also directly set a value at a certain index. So whereas add, it will add it to the end or add it at a certain point. Set just completely overrides the value. It will set the value of the element at index 0 to 1. Okay. You can also remove an element, and it will actually return the value that you remove. But either way, this is array.remove, and it removes the element at index 0, and all the later elements will shift down. Okay. And then you can also clear the array, which will delete all the elements inside the array list and set the size back to 0. Okay. So the key thing is array lists have a flexible size, and they can have elements added, removed, or changed anywhere in the array. So it's a very flexible form of the array that we know. And obviously, this will probably lead us to having a lot of comparisons between arrays and array lists. Let's just take a look at them right now. So behind the scene, right? So normal arrays are useful when we don't have to change the size of the array, and we have to store a really large amount of data with maximum efficiency. Okay. But it's better to use an array list when we have to be changing the size of the array. We're constantly adding and removing elements from the array list, and we're doing a lot of processes on that array. Or indices will have to be queried based on element value, because array list is a bunch of really handy, helpful methods that can let you do a lot of things. So normal arrays, like primitive arrays, let's call them that. Primitive arrays are more efficient in memory and processing time, especially when you're using primitive types of primitive arrays. And so for very intensive tasks, like when you're going through like maybe an array of 10,000 elements or so, it's very nice to use an array. An array list is less efficient, and you also have to use object types. And the reason why array list is less efficient is because array list behind the scene, it's called an array list because it uses primitive arrays behind it. And every single time you add or remove something, it creates a new array every single time. So doing stuff with an array list can become really expensive if you're doing them over and over again really quickly. So here we have some comparison. This is how you initialize, right? Integer, square brackets, your array equals new int 3, right? List, integer my list equals new array list. And you might have noticed in the previous code, we said array list here first, and here in this code, we say list first. That has to do with class inheritance, which is, I think we're going to cover that in the next class. But just remember for now, there's a bunch of different versions of lists in Java, and you can all assign them to a valid type of list, okay? But either way, list, integer, my list equals new array list. And notice here that we're already creating it with a size of 3, but here we're creating it with a size of 0, and then it will grow and shrink as we go. In order to set an element, where did my mouse go? Here we go. In order to set an element, you say my array 0 is equal to 5. That's with a primitive array, right? But with with an array list, you just say my list.set the index position, and then your value. In order to get an element, you have to say my array square brackets 0. With a list, you call the .get method and an index. Okay. In order to get the size, array is .length for a list .size. All right. And then when you're adding an element, you cannot add an element already to the end of it, right? Because here I'm trying to add an element to index position 5, but like this is a size of 3, so that's not even possible. Okay. But with the my list, you can do .add 0. And let me see if we can get that box to go away so you guys can see it. Yeah, there you go. You are allowed to use .add. We're going through these pretty quick because these are pretty short topics. But do I have any questions so far? Or does this all make sense to everyone? If this makes sense to you, or it doesn't make if this makes sense to you, can you guys do the thumbs up reaction for Zoom? Okay. One person did a thumbs up. Does that mean you guys don't understand? Oh, you can't do the thumbs up, I get it. Okay. Okay. Okay, you just say thumbs up. All right. I think we can move on then. Now I do kind of want to do a classwork question. I'm gonna go quickly look one up right now because I did not prepare one before class. Let's see. Where do I do arrays? Let's see if we can find a good one we can do in class. Okay, here, I'm gonna do a practical example. Oh. Okay, we're gonna do this question. All right, this is a practice it self-check question. And all we have to do is we have to write code that creates an array of integers named data of size 5 to the following contents. And I'm just gonna demonstrate it for now. So this is with a normal array. I remember last class I don't think I got a chance to do. I don't think I got a chance to show actual code of it. So this solution is actually for bare code, so I don't have to write a method header or anything. So, oh, sorry, excuse me. This is an array size of 5. So I'm gonna say, let's just say array for now. So int array is equal to new integer and the size of 5, right? And I can say the first one is equal to 27, 1. Oh shoot, no, this is totally wrong. Say it like this. And then -1. So, and remember, because we set an integer, this array can now only hold an integer. That's why it's like this. On Monday, October 5th. Sorry about that. Okay, that's totally wrong. 4. I'm referring to. Wait, hold on, something here is weird. Oh, am I supposed to print it out? Okay, wait, what? This question is strange. Oh, I have to call it data. I see. Yeah, there we go. Okay. And let's see if we can find an array list problem. Let's see. Here we go, array list. All right, we got, I think this question should be pretty fun to do. All right, I'm gonna let you guys spend some time to think about how this works. Would this be too difficult? A developer produced by the method when passed each of the following array list. Okay. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna give you guys about 5 to 10 minutes to try to think about this question, and let's see if we can figure it out. All right. All right. So Ryan is actually the first one to get it in right on time. The answer is indeed 1268, as you can see here. So let's go ahead and walk through this to see why it's 1268. Okay, because there's a lot of jumbly stuff here. So first of all, we pass in a list, right? And that's 2618, right? And then we start at the very last element because list top size is 4, minus 1 is 3, and the element at index 3 is 8. And then when I is greater than 0, we go I minus minus. So we start counting down. So go to 3, 2, 1, and we stop before we go to 0. Next, we have a statement that says if list.get I is less than list.get I minus 1, then we do this. Otherwise, we do nothing. So what this means is if the element that we're currently on is less than the element before it, we'll do something. If not, we'll just move on. So right now, I is equal to 3, which is an 8. Is 8 less than 1? No. Move on. Now we're at I equals 2. I equals 2 is 1. Is 1 less than 6? Yes. So let's go on and do stuff in here. First of all, we get the value at 2, so that's 1. And then we remove that element. So now after this line, we only have 268 because we removed 1. And then we add that back to 0. So we move it to the front, basically. So now we're 1268. Now that everything is shifted, I'm actually going to write it here. 1268. We're now at index 1, okay? And 1 is before it. So is 2 less than 1? No. Move on. And obviously the array stops before we get to index 0. So our answer is 1268. I hope that sort of makes sense to everybody, but this is kind of has to do with how you use for loops and if, and the numerous array list methods. Okay. So let's go back to the slides. Yes, slides. Now we're going to talk a little bit about how do we traverse arrays with loops. Okay. Now we've already done this before. We traverse through arrays with a for loop, with a normal for loop, and most of this code can be directly replaced with the drop-in replacements with ArrayList. But yeah, this is how we do it for now. But this is a very common way to do it. You just start index 0, and you start looping up from there. Nice and simple, right? Oh, and just to clarify the term traversing means to go to like scan through something, to go from left to right or whatever. Okay. Iteration about means the same. You count up and you iterate through it. Now, this is called the enhanced for loop, and it also goes by another name called the for each loop. And it's a shorthand equivalent of this, okay? So we start with the same thing here. We have a for loop, okay? And we have parentheses. We assign a variable a name, so like integer value, and then we say colon, and then we say after that the variable that holds the array. So for each value in ARR, we can just print it out. So it does the exact same thing as the previous one, but you don't need to track the index or use a conditional and an iterator. Java will do that for you. Okay. So for simple operations where all you have to do is go through it and do something, I would recommend using this. But if you need that index, you have to keep track of the index. That's when you might want to use a traditional for loop. You can also do it with recursion, and you just pass the array back in, and then you can see as nx plus 1 is less than array.length, and then you call stuff again, blah 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 blah. You know, it loops on and on. It's recursion. All right, now how we're gonna go into something a bit special, and it's called pass by value. And pass by value has to do with objects, parameters, and primitive types. Okay, when we have a method that has a parameter, like an integer parameter or a double or a boolean, a primitive type parameter, the value will be copied. Okay, so essentially the variable is different. It points to a new variable. But when you pass in an object like an integer array or an array list, it is no longer copies it. It passes by value or passes by reference. Okay. So let's go and go over pass by value really quickly. So in Java, most variables are passed by values, and when we say most variables, we mean primitive types. This means that if you call a method with a primitive or a string parameter, the method uses a copy of the value you passed in, and the original value will not be modified. So you can have a method change the value of the parameter, but the original one will not be affected. So let's go through this code really quickly. We have a number, integer number equals 2, right? We call number plus 1 number, and here, this is the method that gets called. On my pointer. This is the method that gets called, and we do number plus equals 1. But within the scope of this function, because integer number is actually a copy of what was passed in here, in this scope, number is equal to 2, but out here, in this scope, the number is equal to 3 because 2 plus 1 is 3. But in this scope, where it was originally being called, it is not equal to 3. It's still equal to 2. It doesn't change because this is actually a copy. All right. And that's the way that most of us will think about parameters. That's probably the most intuitive way we think about it. And see if we system out that print line, number will still equal 2. What if we use the number plus 1 return method? We say return number plus 1, and then we reassign number, and then number will change. Okay, number will equal 3. So that's how you deal with pass by value. Okay. Now, if we want to pass by value with arrays, pass by value means that the location of the array is the value passed. Or sorry, it's not pass by value. Let me change this. I think it's called pass by reference. Okay, so this is technically passed by reference, right? And it means that instead of passing in a copy of the variable, a copy of the variable's value, we pass the reference to the values. And I was just gonna keep reading this. This means that the copied value points to the same location entered for the same array. This also applies to ArrayList and other objects. So basically, if you look behind a computer, if you know about RAM and whatnot, obviously computers, everything is stored as zeros and ones, right? But there are also certain numbers that determine where in the RAM that information is being stored. Is it being stored here, or is it being stored here, or somewhere else, right? And that value is called a pointer. It points to a location in memory, and every single time you declare a variable, you're pointing to a location in that memory, okay? And Java doesn't have anything to do with pointers. That's a more C or Go thing to deal with, but it's nice to know how it's working behind the scenes. And basically with pass by reference, it copies the pointer. You're passing in the pointer. So when you try to modify a pass by reference object in the method, the original object itself will be changed. Okay, so let's take a look at the code. Here we have an integer array with values 2 to 0, right? And we call the method change index 1 to 3 array. Just like before in this one with the primitive type, we modify the array directly. So array 1 is equal to 3, and array is the parameter here, and we pass in an array. But because the pointer is copied, it points to the array of the parameter. So this array points to this, and this array is actually this exact same object. It's not a copy. So when we do system out print line, array 1, or sorry, it should be array 0. Oh my goodness, there's a bunch of errors in this slide. There you go. When we do array, oh wait, no, I'm wrong. That is right. Oh my goodness. Okay. Array 1 will indeed be changed to 3. Okay, and that's passed by reference. And we can say here, array 1 is equal to 2, 0. Integer array 2 is equal to array 1. This is technically also passed by reference. If you try to do this with a primitive, it will copy the primitive. But if you modify array 2, it will also modify array 1 because array 1 is an object. So there's a clear difference there, right? So now we're starting to step into the difference between primitive variables and primitive variables and whatchamacallit, and objects. And somebody is asking if arrays aren't immutable. An immutable means that you cannot change it at all, and that technically that's wrong, because you can still change the values inside the array. Okay, but what it means is that if you want to copy an array, you have to do a deep copy. So you have to make a completely new array. You have to loop through the old array and then assign new values to the new array. Does that sort of make sense? Okay. And so let's go ahead and do an exercise. Okay, wait, this is an empty slide. But I do have an exercise for you all. It'll be a short one, and you can post to Slack, and if I give you guys the thumbs up, I will let you guys go. We can end class a little bit earlier today. So let me go in and quickly type this up. It's part of a Java curriculum. We're gonna make this method, okay? We're gonna make a method that will modify a string array list by adding the string chicken to the end of every string in the array. So I'm gonna give you guys an example of an input output. Actually, you know what? I can type this in IntelliJ really quickly. Give me like a minute. All right. And then your output is going to equal so the end result of the input should equal this, okay? So this is what you're going to be passed in. So you have to make a method, all right? And I want you to turn in the code that contains the method header, where it's like, you know, say static, void, etc. But use pass by reference to modify the array that is passed in and add chicken to the end of every single one of the elements, okay? So I'm going to give you guys some time to do it. Just do the whole same thing with Slack threads that we did, where you're just supposed to code in there, and then class will be over. So I'll let you guys get to it. Try to do it before the end of 4 o'clock. And if you guys have any questions about it, or you don't know how to do it, you can just DM me, and I'll try to help you resolve your issue. Okay, look, you want to try to loop through, like you want to make a method that has a parameter that takes in a string array, or you can do a string array list if you want. You want to take in a parameter, and you want to loop through it, and you want to add the string chicken to the end of every string in an array. Okay, how about at 55? I'll go ahead and write the code with you all to do it. All right, it's now 3:55, and I want to make sure that you guys all can understand this before we end class today. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my IntelliJ. Okay. Oh, no. I'm gonna go ahead and make a new class. It's called, I don't know, add chicken. Okay. All right. Let's see. Let me make sure you guys. Yeah, you guys can see my tiles, right? I'm zooming a bit. So every time we want to run code, we have to make a main class. Okay. And then we're gonna make a new method. We're gonna call it static void because we don't want to return anything. And we're just calling this add chicken for now. And we're gonna take in a string, a string array. Okay. I'm gonna say array. Okay. And then I'm gonna go ahead and make my input here. String. Actually, okay, look. See you soon. Is equal to, and then I'm gonna put some of my variables here. I'm gonna call add chicken input. Okay. And then I'm gonna do print out the values. You can forego the brackets if you only have one of them. If you only have one line in the for loop. That's just a small trick you can do. Okay. And then here, I'm gonna go for integer I equals 0, I is less than array.length. I say I plus plus. Okay. And then I can say array of I is gonna equal, well, the current thing plus chicken. I'm gonna concatenate chicken onto it. Now if I were to run this, I can right click, press run. You see, that's chicken, and I'm actually calling the original method. And you can actually do the exact same thing with an array list. Okay. I'll show you the array list equivalent version of it. Static void add chicken list. I'm going to use a list of strings. I'm going to call this my list. Okay. And it'll show up red for a bit. You're going to have to import class. Okay. And you want to import from java.util. And add this line to the very top. If you don't have IntelliJ and you don't have an auto import feature, just remember to add this line to the very top unless you use list. So I can say array list. What's it? Array list string input is equal to, and I noticed this. I know how to do this as like a trick, but I can say it like this. Okay, I can just quickly make convert. Oh, actually, no, I can do this. Does not work? Oh, okay. Okay, I have to use erase that as a list. All right, done. Now I can just do add chicken list, input list, system.out.println input list. Okay, and I'm gonna use it for each. I'm gonna use the same code here basically, but equivalent. So I can go ahead and copy and paste this. Array.set, and I can say list. I say I, and then list.get I plus chicken. Instead of length, I use size. If I run this, you can see that we add chicken to the end of it. And it's pretty funny because we passed an input, right? When we create the input list, it's once again a copy of this one, which was already processed by this. We got chicken. So I hope this makes sense to everybody. We're basically on 4 o'clock now, and you guys are dismissed. You guys can go. And be sure to come to our meetings next Wednesday and Friday. They're not on the calendar yet, but I'll be sure to add them. Bye-bye, everyone.